Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's regional fishing report, where we're going to have Captain Chris Tweedy with Topwater Kayak Charters out of South Carolina. Let's bring him in.
Hey, good evening. How's it going?
How are you? It's been a while.
Yeah, no kidding. It's great to be back. I'm sorry I missed last month. I had evening charters with flood tides and stuff like that going on.
Well, shame on you for running your business.
Right.
We're just so grateful to have you. So thanks for joining us. Before we get started, can you do a quick, short intro to your charter service?
Sure. So I run basically a boutique style customized charter out of the South Carolina, Charleston area, mostly running inshore trips as well as some freshwater trips. So I'm mostly trying to take out 2-3 customers at a time, not much more than that. Sometimes I'll pair up with another guide service to take out a larger group, which I think we'll talk about in a little while. But I'm chasing mostly inshore, freshwater fish. So the inshore bite will be redfish, trout, flounder, stuff like that, sharks sometimes.
Oh, wow. Shark. That's exciting. I think we touched on that last time, but it's been a little bit.
Yeah. So we'll use light tackle and chase them. And I'm sorry, my dog's going nuts in the background. We're having a lightning storm here. So we'll use lighter tackle and live bait and typically catch anything up to about a 5-foot shark or so. Anything bigger than that, we're really going to use tackle that's going to break off so we don't have to deal and have the customers trying to manage bigger stuff that really could put a number on somebody in terms of hurting them.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And getting rolled off the kayak, maybe even if you get a really lively shark, huh?
Well, we're using Hobie kayaks, so it's generally going to be a relatively stable platform. And more often than not, we're using the kayak to kind of play the fish. So the fish is going to drag us around and become like a secondary drag and tire it out. So flights can last up to about an hour or so, but frankly, you'll decide well into that if this is going to wind up being something that is going to break you off, or you just need to kind of pull the hook and sacrifice the fight just to kind of get a shot at something a little more manageable in terms of landing it.
Okay, that sounds really exciting. I'd like to get more into a little bit about the technique with that. We had another gentleman who's local who does kayak fishing as well. Mm-hmm. And technique is really important, I know, in a kayak when you're pulling that heavy weight of that type of fish. But before we do, if somebody wants to schedule a charter with you, how do they reach you?
Oh, okay. So there's a number of ways to do it. You can always reach out to me directly, and I'm going to update what my information here like I did last time in terms of my contact information. So I'm going to put my phone number up here, which is honestly the best way because I tend to want to talk to the customers to find out what they're coming in with in terms of a skill set and experience to kind of shape the trip to their abilities. So which is kind of what I specialize in. I'll pretty much try to meet the customer at whatever level they need to be met at to make it successful. So I'm more or less kind of like a fishing coach and concierge. So sometimes it's psychological, sometimes it's just baiting the hook and making the cast for everybody. So wherever it is in the process, I try to meet folks where they need to.
Talking about success, happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
But you won second place in a tournament.
Yeah, so about 5 years ago, I started a tournament on a whim that brought in about a dozen anglers just to test format to go for bowfin freshwater fishing. So for those not familiar, these are basically a native fish to North America, particularly east of the Mississippi River. They're a hard fighting fish. They look similar to like a snakehead for those familiar for like the Chesapeake watershed, like around you guys, and a little bit north and south of that. These fish have been around since like the dinosaurs in terms of being the same and in terms of the same. And they're basically a swamp fish, like a low water, like a low light, low oxygen fish. So anyway, they used to be considered a trash fish, but we've worked here in South Carolina to kind of promote them as more of a game fish. So we've started a tournament series, and now in the 5th year and the 4th official year that we've had this tournament, we had 60 anglers out. So I was lucky enough to wind up at second place, and it was a thrill. I didn't quite have the success finding the big fish that I'd hoped to, and I honestly didn't think I even had the best bag of the folks that were on one of the 2 lakes that I was on that we were able to fish. I managed to have the best day of anybody on that lake, and then that catapults me anyway into second place. So yeah, it was great for a tournament that started off paying like $100 to the winner. My second place prize was like 400 plus.
Yes.
So yeah, it's a growing sport here. We've got anglers from as far away from New York that came all the way down to fish for this, folks from North Carolina. We're hoping to bring back the national championship in another year or so once we get a little bit more regional support for this. So, and I think you guys will hopefully be involved in that as we move forward. So anyway, yeah, it was great to do that. It was a fun way to spend my birthday weekend. And there's a few more smaller events like that popping up around here. So if you're in the area, check it out. You can find it on the Low Country Kayak Anglers on Facebook page. Will have a lot of the local kayak tournaments, as well as good information, as well as reports from me and a few other great anglers in the area.
Okay, so we should follow you on your Topwater Kayak Charters Facebook. And what was the name that you mentioned?
So Low Country Kayak Anglers, it's a resource for folks on Facebook. It's a large club based centrally in the Charleston area, but throughout the South Carolina, that promotes kayak fishing as well as provides tournaments and an Angler of the Year series for both fresh and saltwater. So it's a great sort of opportunity for folks that may be more advanced than needing a charter with me, but want to like plug in to a community of other like anglers in throughout the state.
Yeah, 60 anglers. That's a big number for a kayak tournament.
Yeah, for around here, there's some folks running tournaments out of Charlotte that are getting like over 100 plus for events, but yeah, we haven't really done anything on that magnitude along the coast where I am.
Yeah, well,
so it's great. It's fun.
I'm sad that we missed you connecting on that tournament, but I'm definitely look forward to connecting with you soon and getting out there and bow fishing and doing some amazing stuff. So if you're in the Charleston area, correct?
Correct. Yep, absolutely.
Contact Captain Chris Tweedy for an amazing adventure kayak fishing. We had the pleasure of going out with you, and that was fun.
And I hope you guys get back down here soon. So we were going to have you guys cover that, but there's absolutely no cell phone coverage of the lakes that we were having the tournaments at. Like anglers had to leave the lake and go to different areas just to get their pictures uploaded. So it would have been a bit of a train wreck for that. So anyway, we'll get it situated.
We could record it and then play it back later. We'll figure something out because I definitely want to capture this. This is a great event and a huge following, it seems like, with 60 anglers at this tournament. So you have something going here.
Oh yeah, I hope so.
Yes. Speaking of having something going, I was looking at your Facebook page and I noticed that you're collaborating with another charter to help bring children out on the water. That's amazing. I love the photos. If anyone gets a chance, you have to go to Topwater Kayak Charters Facebook because these are adorable. I wish I could put them up on the screen. They're so cute. How old is this kid? He looks like he's 6. He's so cute.
Oh, they are.
Tell me about what's going on there.
So the kids that you're looking at are anywhere from like 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. And lately the trips have been a solid split between ones I've done with just a parent and a child, sort of single trips, or I've been running trips with multiple parents and kids. So it's like 2 parents, 2 kids, or a parent and a grandparent and 2 kids and stuff like that. For the trips where there's more than 2 kids involved, when there's 2 or more kids involved, my friend Rob also runs a kayak charter up out of Polly's Island, called Polly's Island Beach to Creek. So when we get opportunities to take out bigger groups, we'll work together. We'll travel to each other's areas and kind of, there you go.
There's a photo.
We'll work together. Yeah, that's Harrison. He was out with me last Friday. He was absolutely like this little chubby bundle of joy. It's as much fun to like see these kids doing this as it is to take like to see the pictures that I get when I get home. It's just magical.
Oh, I'm surprised he's that strong to hold it. He's so cute.
So this kid was this kid was hysterical. He came out and he's like, he had a list of things he wanted to accomplish, and he was 6 years old.
Oh,
he wanted to catch a spinner shark, he wanted to catch a black tip shark, and he wanted to catch a hammerhead. So we switched to shark fishing after we did this stuff with the redfish, and I don't have a lot of pictures from that because I was pretty busy with the sharks. so we wound up catching a really small shark that would have passed for a spinner shark. So we checked that box. It was a spinner shark. And then his dad hooked and then fought. And then we wound up giving Harrison the rod, caught like a 3-foot blacktip shark. So he got his blacktip deal, but we missed out on catching a bonnethead or a hammerhead of any kind. So so what we do basically is the triple vary. If it's 2 people, it's a little easier. I can go focus on the redfish and the flounder and stuff like that. When we get multiple kids and stuff like that, we'll usually get on an area where we can utilize like a lot of different species of fish. So we'll go somewhere where there's like an oyster mound, throw a bunch of bait on jig heads and things like that. And then the kids are just catching like pinfish and pigfish and like anything that'll bite croakers and whiting and stuff like this. Like I was out yesterday with Rob and we did a trip together. And the little kid that I had with me, he kept wanting to like name the fish that he was catching. So he was catching a million croaker. He got to catch like 50 of them. And that was fine because they wanted to take a bunch home to do a fish fry. So he named the first fish Croaky, right? So all the other fish then, that's not Croaky. Anyway, that's a different trip. Different fish, different trip. So he like caught Croaky's whole family and had no problem like throwing them all in the cooler. So, but it's funny because like all these kids have different reactions to stuff. Like I had a little girl a few weeks ago that caught a fish and she was like, "Is it going to live?" And I was like, "Well, we're going to put it in the water, and if it floats, it's not going to live, and if it swims down, it's fine. It's going to swim away." So I didn't understand there was the potential for a third option there, and she put the fish in the water, and it was slowly starting to recover. And a little bonnethead shark come up and swim around it and grabbed it and swam off. So she was like heartbroken. That was her first fish. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, we take these kids out and then we just try to get them like catching like 50, 60 fish and the rods just keep bending. So it's a lot of like folks on vacation or people that want to treat their kids to something special before they go back to school. But it's a totally different experience than taking folks out and chasing like redfish and bigger fish and things like that. So, but it's like you want to hope that like you instill something in the kid and that they want to do this forever and hang out like with their parents like that, because the parents have a blast. I mean, we'll talk to the parents and tell them like, you're not going to catch fish. The kids are just going to keep catching fish. And the parent, like, we'll throw 3 rods out and eventually a parent has to pick a rod up and catch something. But by and large, it's just about keeping the kids busy. And these kids are lasting like 4 or 5, 6 hours out on a kayak, and they're 6 and 7 years old.
Wow.
And it has to be a one-on-one experience though. Yeah. So I feel like I do a pretty good job with them. The kids have a blast, and I try to make each one special and individual, and we do a great job working together on some of these groups. And like, there's a lot of folks like homeschool groups will come out and bring kids out for on the water experience. There's been a lot of like sensory interactive stuff with kids that may have like something like autistic related in terms of diagnosis and stuff. So it's a lot of opportunities to like engage with kids in a really cool, special one-on-one way and still have like the parent involved. I'll like wade between the 2 boats and have, like you saw the dad and the kid were both in the picture there and stuff like that. Like I want to create like lasting memories and impressions for them. So,
oh my gosh, I haven't cried yet on a fishing report. You're pushing it with me, Chris. It's, how important I know you know this about me, but I say this on a lot of our shows, particularly when we do it together or solo, how important it is for me in my heart and where I am with kids, just to get them on the water. And more than that, I mean, you talked about, special needs, just bringing families together, everything you just mentioned. I almost started to cry. I need to keep tissues close when I'm on the show with you. But I think that's great what you're doing. And you're right. You're doing something pretty amazing, not just, for getting them on fish, but one, to keep them out that long, changing lives and giving a great experience. So that's beautiful.
Thank you. I'm great.
Grant's excited too. He's like, Grant has a daughter, so he gets excited about these things too.
Like perfect. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure she doesn't need help getting on a fish with you guys around, but that's the thing. It's just so it's great to have the families involved like that. And I probably done in the summertime, it's a good split between family trips and regular trips. So it's been about 50-50 this year. So.
Yeah. Well, I can talk all night about this, but we need to get to a fishing report.
Fair enough.
We start with shark. what's going on with the sharks? What technique are you using? What lures you're using? Can you give me everything you got?
So really, kind of lures are out the window at this point. It's really much bait season. So for the next month, the fish are going to be feeding and getting prepared to start like the mullet migration. So for kayaks, like October is when everybody considers like the beachfront run of all the mullet and stuff like that. For the kayak fishing, at least from my perspective, September is when that happens because the fish are up in the backwaters and they're starting to stage up and make their move towards like the harbor and the open water and stuff like that, and the bays and the ocean. So we use late October or late August through September to kind of get ready to chase that. But anyway, back to the shark bite. So right now, mullet bite is really heavy with stuff. So if I can get mullet or menhaden, that's going to be my primary source of bait. I'll also use things like ladyfish have been great in terms of chunking them up and using sections of them for bait. I can almost guarantee I'm going to get a pretty fast shark bite on something like that. Blue crab have been working to focus more on like the edges of the marsh and throwing stuff at like oysters and like rougher edges rather than a mud flat to get like the bonnet heads and things like that. We're going to generally use a bigger hook. So something with like a 6/0, 5/0, something that's going to a circle hook too. So it'll be like right in the corner of the mouth. Right. And then weight wise and gear wise with the kayaks, we're going really light. So it's going to be 3,000 to 4,000 size reels. I'm using right now, I think I have 30-pound test line for my main line. And then it's going to be like a weight and it'll vary by the terrain. So it can be a fish finder rig. It can be a Carolina rig. But basically on the bottom, something that's going to hold the bottom, whatever the best rig for the situation. And that's really going to be dictated by your environment more than anything to keep it down low. So chunks of bait. So something maybe like the size of your fist or a little bit smaller. If you have like an 8-inch mullet, cut it in half or into thirds, just to get some scent in the water. So usually along sort of the edges of drop offs, around points and bends and stuff like that, where there's transitions in terms of shallow water that quickly drops off into like what they'll call a shark hole or something like that, where it'll whirlpool a little bit and the water will kind of stay cooler and more oxygenated than everything around it. So we can also be using like bigger jig heads. So like a 1 or 2 ounce, like bottom sweeper style jig with the bait on it. For that, I might use like a live mullet and cut like the tail section off of it so that it sort of bleeds a little bit out into the water there, just to get a little bit of scent out there. So with the kayaks, the leader becomes really the test of how long you can handle the fish. So typically I'm using anywhere from 60 to 80 pound leader in like a 3 or so foot length. It's going to be a shock leader to help with the abrasion, but like a bigger shark, something that like I don't want the person in the kayak to deal with in terms of getting it next to the boat. We're going to either like hold the drag and lock it down and pop the rig, or eventually the shark's either going to bite through the line because there's no metal on it other than the swivel, or it's going to tail rash and like brash the line off. So if you get like a 6 foot shark, or like we've hooked some spinner sharks and crazy like bigger stuff that's kind of like just taking it and didn't know it was hooked and just kept going kind of stuff. But eventually like their tail's going to hit that because there's so much of the braid exposed that they just cut it right off. So we're not trying to catch sharks that are really going to like put anybody in. I have to deal with it. So once we see what it is, we'll kind of make a determination on what we're going to do with it. And like generally the kids don't hold them. We'll try to get like a picture of holding it up near your end or something like that. But so other folks are like, I want to take that home and eat it. So we've done that before, but that's a little more difficult in terms of 100% identifying to make sure you're not like violating any like game laws and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
good point with regulations. Check your state regulations. Really quick though, I have a question from the studio audience.
Sure.
Grant.
Oh, just wanted to, what are your options? He said, like, are there any you can keep?
Oh, okay. So he wanted to know what the options are for keeping the sharks.
I mean, in terms of what do we do with it on a kayak?
Pulling it off and eating it.
You just mentioned something like you reel it in to see what the options are. What are those options?
Okay. When you had mentioned when you see the shark, then you make a determination. You know, what are those options at that point?
So you're going to basically bring it to the surface, trying to get a picture of it, like right underneath the surface of the water next to the kayak. You can land the shark. So depending on the shark, you really want to kind of get a real tight grip on it right behind the gills, like right by the gills there, so that it's far enough behind the head to control it, but close enough that it can't turn around on you. And then your best bet is to get a grip on the tail. If you look at some of the pictures, like you were saying on my Facebook page,
Yes.
You'll see some poses with like go back to like May and June.
Yeah,
you'll see more adults with sharks and stuff like that. So
yeah.
The famous pose that they love to do is to hold the mouth like forward so it's open, so you can see, and you'll see there's a pretty good one from like back in May, I think, of something like that. But the craziest thing I ever had happen was I had this 4th grade kid out with me last year that was like a local, that he was a kid that was fishing down the dock, and I felt bad for him because he always like pier fishing, and I was like, come on out with me. So he caught this like 4.5-foot bonnethead, and it was like absolutely enormous. And he used this little tiny like Walmart $6 net and hooked it around the hammer and dragged it in a kayak. And he's like, I'm taking this home.
Oh.
And I'm like, no, we're not. No, we're not.
Gung ho, right on.
So the next thing I know, he's standing up in my kayak, and this thing's bigger than him, and he's holding it up like this, and it's like, it's crazy. It's like from exactly a year ago around this time. But like, this kid is so pumped. But yeah, that's not normally something we're gonna let. He hooked it with the net and just said, I'm bringing this thing in. Like I was like, nope. And it was like, boom, and it's in his lap. So yeah, it gets a little dicey. Like the little kid that you were showing the pictures of that had the redfish with his dad.
Yeah.
I would let him touch the shark and pet it and stuff like that. But like, he wasn't old enough to be able to handle it in terms of like between the reaction and like anticipating. So no, I had a funny shot where a guy last year was holding a shark out, and it like swung up and tried to bite like right under his arm.
Yeah. We pulled up a hammerhead. Well, we couldn't pull it up out of the water, but we pulled in a hammerhead. And that was a little scary. I never been close to a shark before. It was about 4 feet long. It was pretty beautiful, majestic, and amazing. But, the first thing I thought was like, be careful, don't get too close to it, because we have to take the hook out and everything. All I think of is hands, feet, toes, body parts, keep them intact.
I've been around some big ones, like some 8-9 footers and stuff like that in the kayak, like within touching distance and stuff.
For sure.
Like not on a hook, just kind of free swimming. Bull sharks, tiger sharks, hammerheads.
Bull sharks, yeah. So really fun catches with sharks, but always consider your safety first. Consider scheduling a charter with Captain Chris Tweedy. We have a few minutes left. I just want to mention too, since we're talking about beauty and majestic scenery, the additional photos you have on here with the children, you have the background scenery, which is beautiful. So not only are they getting a fishing experience, but they're also learning about nature. I see this huge stingray. I don't know what type it is, but it jumps out of the water, full winged, tail flipping. What's going on?
So that's actually a kid's trip, and there was 2 parts to this. That was actually a fish that Rob was with a young man. They were fishing on his kayaks. He hooked into that as our last fish of the day, and it dragged us. It was about an 8-foot across manta ray. And we caught it on little like 2,500 size rods and reels with like $20 like Gander Mountain rods. And
that's crazy.
So it dragged us about 1.5 miles towards the ocean. Halfway through, the kid tired out. So his dad and I took over the fight, and we got it next to us. And that picture you're seeing is when we got next to it, it drove itself up onto a sandbar and just kind of reached completely out of the water and went back in. It was incredible.
Beautiful.
And then it was about a minute or two before we had to break it off because it was running like the open ocean. So we had a little kid with us, so we couldn't really. That's a situation where you're like, we're not gonna handle this fish. No. So we have to let it go.
Yeah. So, amazing experience though. Absolutely amazing experience. I mean, I looked at him like I told Graham, like, this is amazing. huge, beautiful. So I love that. Again, it's not just about fishing, it's about the experience. You never know what's going to pop out of the water, which can always be beautiful and amazing. From reds to bowfin, which, I wanted to get to talk about that. Unfortunately, we don't have time.
That's okay.
But I'd love to talk so much more. I look forward to next month. Unfortunately,
Absolutely.
Grant, we'll have to switch out. Grant's got you.
That's all right, because we'll be heading into bull redfish season next month. So
okay, so Grant has given me the go to talk about one more fish. Your choice.
All right, so let's see. Sorry.
Okay.
So we were talking about bowfin for a second. I have one more quick story about a kid. So there's a young man that had been fishing with me for a few trips. His uncle went out with me. He went on a bowfin trip. So the kid called me. His family hooked it up, so his dad had to take me out. So he went on 3 trips, and then I took him to a tournament, like a smaller tournament than the one that I was in last week. Mm-hmm. And he wound up finishing 3rd, beating me, and finishing basically 3rd to 2 guys that are like pretty renowned through the area in terms of like kayak bowfin fishing. So he took his 3rd time out, and as a 14-year-old competed with a couple guys that have been doing this for about 6-7 years.
Nice. So, well, Grant cut me off because I'm going to ask a question about bowfin if we go over. But, when you talked about initially, the first thing that came to mind was the comparison to the snakehead. About the snakehead, they make you work for it. They're very protective of their young. And you could be out there all day before you catch one. Is it similar situation with the bowfin? Do they make you work for it? What's the scenario?
So for some folks, that's the case. I'm taking charters out, so I felt like I was in a different tournament than some of the folks that were fishing it, because I was like into 5 fish in like 2 hours and like upgrading, where folks struggled to put any in the boat all day long. For me, I think it's just I do it enough that I'm dialed in on it, and I can translate it for other people and do it pretty well. It's very similar to like a finesse bass fishing bait.
Okay.
Right. So it's smaller stuff. A lot of people are moving to smaller baits like TRDs and things like that to fish for them, instead of like the traditional like spinner baits and chatter baits and stuff like that. So I'll still use chatter baits, but I'll use like a little tiny like micro finesse chatter bait that you'd use for like crappie and stuff like that. And as long as you don't try to horse the fish, you can kind of walk it into the boat, and then the real fight's like when you make eye contact with it, basically. I'll take you guys out one time. Yes. Next time you're down here, that's what we're doing.
Awesome.
Because it's year round. I mean, as long as the rivers aren't flooded, you can do it. So
that would be awesome. That'd be awesome. All right. Let me just double check to see if we have any questions. Any questions from the studio audience?
Not at this moment.
No. Okay. Well, again, Captain Chris Tweedy out of Charleston, South Carolina. Kayak tours and fishing, definitely sign up today. Awesome, amazing adventure. Check out his Facebook. Amazing photos of some beautiful fish, kids on water of all ages. We talked even reaching out to special needs, which is amazing too. Every child, no matter what their background is, economic situation, should have a chance to be on the water. So thank you so much for doing your part in getting those kids out there. Your phone number is listed on the screen, and Facebook is what's the Facebook page they should go to?
It's Topwater Kayak Charters.
There we go. We have your email or your.
There you go. He's got it up there.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure as always.
This is always a pleasure for me too. I thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I'll talk to you guys next month.
All right. Have a great evening.
Thanks.
Fish on, everybody.
Just hang around. Too proud to be your fool.